What if your dreams actually knew a big life change was coming before you did?
And what if the dream we analyzed weeks ago suddenly makes a lot more sense?
Yes, that's where we're going.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Deep Diving Divas. I'm Nancy Fox.
And I'm Elaine Duran.
And today we are exploring the fascinating world of dreams again. And we're so honored to have therapist Jessica Lowenstein on the show again today.
Jessica brings a grounded, accessible approach to dream work that bridges psychology, spirituality, and the wisdom of the body. With over 30 years of experience as a licensed psychotherapist, trauma specialist, mindfulness teacher, and a lifelong dreamer herself, she helps people understand what their subconscious mind may be trying to communicate and how to reconnect with their inner wisdom. In her last episode, Jessica analyzed one of my dreams. And since then, my husband and I have made a major life decision. We are moving out of our house of 42 years.
Wow, which makes us wonder, was your dream already processing this shift before you consciously made it happen?
That's exactly what we're going to explore. So, are we ready to dive in with Jessica? Yes.
Hey there, friends, it's Nancy and Elaine. They're the Deep Diving Divas, it's quite a name. They're diving deep into the things that matter most, from friendships to family and so much more. Join them each week for a splash of fun.
Hi, Jessica. It's so nice to have you back.
Oh, it's wonderful to be back. Thank you.
Yes, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Yeah, I felt kind of like it was a cliffhanger at the end of the first episode. So I was really glad that we decided to do a second one, especially because we didn't really get to complete Elaine's dream. At the very end, I asked in the process, what action might you want to take to honor the dream? And you didn't really get to answer that. So I'm wondering if you could fill us in on what happened since that episode, which was about 2.5 months ago.
Yes. Well, very quickly, it seemed to coincide with a major decision that my husband and I made, although we've been talking about this for the last 5 years. We've lived in this home for 42 years and knew that at some time we probably would move. We didn't know we were going to stay here. Well, we knew we'd stay for a long time, but we didn't know when we were going to move. And it was always back and forth. And it always was a question and very difficult and emotional decision. Somehow, after we had our discussion, Richard and I had talked, and it seemed like we were almost like channeled, or something else came over us. We just, something clicked, like, this is the time to move. And some of it coincided with some health issues and other people's health issues. And, and then you realize your own mortality. You realize that you want to do, it's time. It's time for a change. And this has become a real adventure. And it's filled with a lot I would say, sadness, but also so much joy and excitement to know that there is a new journey in our life coming up. And I thank you, because I think talking about the dream that I had made us look at what we had and think about new dreams.
That is such an amazing report. I just love that. And I especially love how you get to highlight for everyone in real time this idea of bridging waking life and dreaming life. And this is a perfect example of how that can occur. Just speaking the dream out loud um, changes things, right? And who knows if it was directly related or not, but it's one of the most powerful things we can do is share a dream. So how are you feeling about this?
You know what? Excited. Excited for a new adventure.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for so courageously sharing your dream and look where it led. I just love that.
Thank you.
All
Well,
right,
best of luck
Jessica.
with that move. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we have a lot more to get to. So, first of all, I don't know if we asked you this last time. Why do we dream? And what happens biologically when we do dream?
Yeah, it's a great question and I'm glad we're coming back to that. Why do we dream? Well, in sleep in general, right? So much healing takes place. They always say sleep is medicine, sleep is medicine. And dreaming, in a way, is medicine too for our psyche, right? So much is being processed, assimilated, integrated during the dream time. And biologically speaking, the prefrontal cortex, our analytical brain that's on all the time, is powering down, and our emotional centers are lighting up. So it's really a kind of housekeeping that goes on where we're kind of processing the day, rehearsing, things, purging things, making sense of things. And then also there's sometimes room for creativity, enlightenment, insight to come through as well.
That's fascinating. I always wondered what that meant. Well, in the first episode, you emphasized the importance of having an active versus a passive relationship with our dreams. Can you share a few practical suggestions or techniques for how someone can go deeper with a dream once they've written it down?
Yes, I love that. I think the theme for today really is about how to make our dream world more active. And um, we talked earlier about the bridge between waking and dreaming life. Really, all of the dialogue I feel like today is going to be around that theme. So truly, the two most potent things I think we can do with a dream is write it down, title it, and put a date on it. And I'll tell you more why later. The second thing is to share the dream with someone,
Mm,
as you did, and you saw how it made it more alive. It brought something out in your emotional life, in your discussion around your stepson, around closure, and then look where it led, right? So it was so powerful to share it. I would say those are the two most important things. Other things are a little bit smaller, taking action, doing research on a part of a dream that maybe you don't know or understand or is confusing to you. So I think as we go today, we're going to get deeper and deeper into different ways to take action on our dreams.
mm,
Good. Okay, well, you mentioned dream reentry as a powerful tool.
Yeah.
What is it, and how can someone step back into a dream to explore or receive more insight?
Yes, I love this. So dream reentry is sort of a waking version of revisiting the dream landscape.
mm.
And I think the most important thing with reentry is being very clear in our intention about what we want to do when we're back inside the dream. And that word's going to come up a lot today, the intention, because energy follows intention. So if we're not clear about our intention, and this is true of anything in life, not just dreaming, then we have trouble kind of getting behind, having an action behind our intention. So it's really helpful to know, okay, I want to go back into this dream and get more information from this character or this, animal or this situation. So being really intentional. And you can do dream reentry in that in between state when you're waking up and you're still not fully awake, where you can kind of re-enter the dream landscape more easily. Have you ever had that experience where you can still grab onto the dream when you're in the morning and you're just kind of lying there a little bit and there's some fragments? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you know what I was going to say on that as you're describing
Yeah.
this. When I was younger, maybe before I was taking sleep aids, I used to dream much more vividly. And sometimes I was so enjoying the dream.
Yeah.
And if somebody somehow woke me up or annoyed, whatever, I kind of welcomed, like, "Oh, I wanna go back to it," and a lot
Yeah.
of times I did,
You
I
could.
finished it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And from the little bit you've shared, you have some innate skill around dreaming. That seems really clear. And so I would encourage you to continue back with that if you can. So when that pre-waking stage is very conducive to going back into the dream. But if we don't do it there, we can do it in two other ways. One is we can just kind of take a few deep breaths, close our eyes, and go back into the dream landscape, you'd be surprised how easy it is when we set the intention to do that. Just kind of taking a few minutes to do that. And the other way is when I do dream circles, I use the drum, which is a way to power a journey, which we can talk more about. Journeying with dreams, journeying with going back into dreams, tracking dreams with animals, and all sorts of. It's a more Native American approach to working with dreams. But we use the drum with the heartbeat at the pace of the heartbeat, which helps us power into the dream a little bit more easily. So I'm specifically doing that without knocking on the table, because I tend to do that too much when we're filming, but just to give you that image of what, it would look like. And that is amazing in terms of how it helps us move back into the dream. But really, it's just an opportunity not to change the dream necessarily, but usually to get more information, maybe to see things from a different perspective. There's lots of different, again, it all starts with our intention.
Well, I'm just wondering, talking about being able to recapture the dream, how about the times when you wake up and you've either had a wonderful dream, you want to tell someone what you dreamt, but you absolutely cannot remember, what
Yeah.
happened. It's just, you know that either it was wonderful or it was scary. There was something about it, but you wake up and it's like, I don't remember what it was, but just feel it. It's either joy or sorrow or something, but where did it go?
It's so true, and it's so frustrating when that happens. Well, it's just, they disintegrate so easily. And one of the topics we may get to, or I could talk about it right now, is, even a fragment, if we can just hold on to a fragment, we can reconstruct the dream. So one of the things, and again, I think it's a later question, but maybe I could just speak to it now because we're on this subject, if that's okay. But there's two things I usually recommend to people if they can, if they don't want to get up and write their dream. Because it's funny, I had a client who listened to the podcast and said afterwards, I went to bed after the last episode. I said, I want to dream and I want to remember my dream. And I did, but I didn't want to get up and write it down. So what else can I do? Well, there's a couple things. One is to put 3 to 5 words together that help you remember certain aspects of the dream that you can reconstruct later. For example, red window upstairs, or, blue truck in the yard, or, whatever. It's just a couple touch points that help us. If we move or open our eyes when we exit a dream like that, it can be lost. So I always recommend to people to spend a little more time in the position that they awoke with their eyes closed. And it's a little easier to get it back. And if you can get it back, even a few fragments, to try to trace the dream a little bit, so you can have one fragment from the beginning, one fragment from the middle, and one fragment from the end, so that when you wake up, you can reconstruct it from those fragments. Okay. So, but don't move. If you can really try to stay where you are, you might get it back. But we usually wake up and try to go into our prefrontal cortex, which is not where it is.
Right. So animals often show up in dreams, and I've dreamt about, past animals, or sometimes you're being chased by an animal, or sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not a good thing. How can listeners work with animal allies, and what might these dream animals be trying to show us?
Yeah, I love animals in dreams. Oh, yeah. And I'm just curious, what animals have you had show up in your dreams, Nancy?
Well, usually, because I'm such a dog lover, a dog, maybe a former dog in my life, or just something, because dogs to me are a happy place. But I've also I think I've been chased more by a lion or something more aggressive, a more aggressive animal. Don't remember that dream. But anyway, so I was just wondering the difference.
Yeah. Well, I think we're all kind of dreaming about, domestic animals, wild animals at different stages and times in our life. And like a dream character, they usually have a reason for showing up, right? And so it's again, it's so personal, but it's really, I think, about being curious about what's happening in the dream with that animal, if it's chasing me, if it's looking to communicate with me, what is the sort of nature of that animal? I had a series of dreams in a prior home, where I had big cats, different types of big cats, lions and pumas, and you know, um,
You didn't literally.
jaguars.
You didn't
No,
literally.
no,
Yeah,
no,
go.
I didn't
Yeah.
literally have them, but I
Okay.
had them coming to me
Good.
regularly in my
Oh, God,
dreams,
that's great.
trying to get me out of that house, breaking
Oh.
windows,
Mm.
trying to get to me. And I've had uh reoccurring themes throughout my whole life, chapters of my life that have shown up in dreams. And one of them is, animals. So one of the things I like to do is to look at the Native American animal medicine card meaning for a specific wild animal, like lion, which I believe is around leadership.
Oh,
Oh.
Um,
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
like deer,
good for you.
gentleness.
Yeah.
There's different meanings depending on what tribes you look at, and I find it fascinating to really, that would be an action step, to do a little research on the animal. Or if it's a domestic animal, I mean, I had a cat that I was so in love with, that visited me after he died so many times, and it was part of how I was metabolizing the loss, you know so I think it really is about, again, it's such a personal, there is no generic answer to that question. It's so personal to what the animal means in the dream, what it means to you, what's happening in the dream, etc.
Well, there's something I think you've talked about it prior when we've had conversations about dream incubation. And could you tell us what is that? And, um, why is it possibly, a simple grounded way when there's questions about facing transitions in life?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's so simple, really. We talked about setting out that welcome mat in the first episode, inviting our dreams. And dream incubation is more about just setting an intention before we go to sleep that we would like guidance on a specific issue. And maybe even writing it down, like tonight I would ask my dream producers to please help give me some guidance around such and such issue. Maybe even write it down, maybe symbolically place it under the pillow or put it on our bedside table. But it's just, again, being active and intentional about, I need some help on this particular issue. And then we're incubating maybe for a few nights. It may not be immediate, but we just keep, repeating it each night before we go to bed. I'd like some information on this. And I had a friend that did that with her husband about a move,
Oh,
ironically. And they were really looking for guidance from the dream world, from the spirit world, from their unconscious, not only about the timing of the move, but where. And they used it. They got clarity, and they used it to make a very, very big move across the country.
oh my
Mm.
gosh.
Incredible.
Yeah.
The dream.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was super cool. But you see the theme today, it's really around active intention and bridging waking and sleeping.
With that in mind, how do we tell when a dream is symbolic versus actually literal?
Yeah. So I would say the majority of the time it's symbolic, and it's symbolic to you individually. And if you track your dreams over time, you sometimes, only in hindsight, do we learn the symbology of dreams. And I think we could talk about some of that, because there are some sort of universal themes that come up for people in dreams. I would say literal dreams are more rare. And I think we covered this a little in the first episode, but just to sort of say it again, they're much more neutral, matter of fact. There's not a lot of emotional charge to them. Whereas a lot of dreams symbolically are very charged. I actually woke up to one this morning that was just super charged. But whenever I have a literal dream, whether it was, my cancer diagnosis, or even, I didn't share this with you, but after my surgery, after they removed the cancer, as I was waiting for the surgeon to call me, because they also took lymph nodes to see if it had spread. The night before, I got her her call, I had a dream in Latin, and I don't speak Latin. I had to look up, that's being
Oh
active. I
my
had to look up
goodness.
what the word meant, but she took 4 lymph nodes, and the dream was in situ, in situ, in situ,
I
4 times. And you know what that means, right?
Mm.
It means hasn't spread, contained.
Ah,
And then
I had that.
she sent me the email the next day. Great news, it hasn't spread.
oh
And
my
I had that
goodness.
dream the night before. Um, but it was very, like I said, that was all the dream was, in situ, in situ. It was very literal, calm, no charge. So I would say that is a good rule of thumb. Of course, it's different for each person, but as a general rule, it is neutral when it is literal. The same thing, I had 2 dreams a week before my father-in-law died. He was completely fine. There was no reason to think anything would happen, and I had 2 dreams back to back that he had died. The first night was just that he died. The second night was we were sitting Shiva at my mother-in-law's house, and I said to my husband the next day, "I had a dream your dad died," and he was like, "Okay, whatever,"
Oh,
because he's used to me, dreaming. He never knows if it's gonna be anything or whatever, and then a few days later, his father fell, and 48 hours later, he was dead.
oh my goodness.
But again, these dreams have been very neutral when they come through.
So here's the part that's always hard. When you have a really emotional, intense dream, dreams of grief or visitation dreams or dreams of people who have passed, what do we do with that?
Yeah. Well, this is a perfect segue from what we were just talking about in terms of, emotion versus literal. And Nancy, I know that you have shared a dream with me that speaks to this, and I wonder if you'd be willing to share it with your listeners and we can talk about it a little bit.
Sure. When you asked me what dream I'd like to talk about, I thought a lot of people can relate to this when you've lost someone that's really precious to you, and then they come to you in a dream. So for me, my dad passed away almost 21 years ago, and I was incredibly close with him. We were really connected and just had a really magical relationship. And I was so saddened when he passed, and I was missing him so much. And it was about 6 months after he passed, I was at my mom's. It used to be my mom and dad's house, but he was gone. And it was the strangest thing, Jessica, because when I in my dream, I knew I was dreaming. And I walked into the kitchen of my mom's house, and there was my dad. And I was so overwhelmed and so, just like shocked, like, oh my good dad, you're here. And I rushed to grab him, to hug him tightly and tell him how much I missed him. And his body disintegrated. And with that, I woke up hysterically crying and just so overwhelmed by it. And I never dreamt about him again.
But you made a promise if you did.
Yes, I said to myself that day, I hope I get the chance to, see him again in a dream. And if I do, I'm going to make sure to quickly grab him and say how much I love him and how much I miss him and how much I, really, cherished, him as a dad and how grateful I was. But I didn't get that. And then I shared with you, but he did come to me while I was awake in the form of a hummingbird. So, what do you make of it, Jessica? I know people have
Wow.
dreams like this, and
Yeah. It's so beautiful, and it really just speaks to your enduring, incredible bond, I think, that you had with your father. And I loved the hummingbird component because it felt like you did get to connect with him in a way, and there was a completion to the dream. However, and I don't think, unfortunately, we have time to go through the whole process that I normally would. But if you were to title the dream, what would you title it?
Mm, that's wow.
I don't know if like I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, well, just take your time. Yeah,
I miss you, Dad.
I miss you. Yeah. I miss you. It's so beautiful. Yeah. And that is, I think, right there what was needed. What is needed is the completion. And if it were my dream, I think I would do a reentry. Right now if we had
When
the
you have
time.
20
Yeah.
20 years later,
Yes,
you
it
can
doesn't
actually
matter.
re-enter it?
Yeah,
How do
and I
I
would do
do
it
that?
I would do it right now even to imagine I don't know if you're comfortable doing it, but what if it were my dream, I would close my eyes, maybe in a private moment, go back into the kitchen, imagine it again, imagine him there again, and actually say the words out loud because you saw when I asked for the title, the emotion is still there. And I think it would just complete the loop. Like it almost feels complete, but not quite because you didn't get to utter the words that you really wanted to utter. So that's what, if it were my dream, I would do is to really say it out loud. I miss you. I love you. You were such an amazing dad.
Yeah.
You know,
I know he knows
of
that
course.
he was, and he knows how I feel, but I just wanted to,
Yeah,
let
and
him
I'm
know that
wondering
again.
how it would feel if you were to actually do that, and that would take an action, that would be active
Yeah,
to honor your father and the dream, and I'm wondering how it would feel to take that action, maybe in a private moment.
I love
And
that.
and and
Thank
and I
you.
just wonder if wanting to be able to do that and tell your dad gives you the opportunity or the freedom to have to see him again. Because maybe if you had said at that time, "Dad, I love you," and then it was completed, you would what else would you wish for after that? Now it just seems like you always know that that door is open, that you're gonna be able to tell him again.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, I don't know, I'm just thinking that it's just hope, and maybe you'll continue to always have that chance so that there'll be those other times.
Yeah, so the language that I would just use is, if it were my dream, like Elaine, if you're speaking, if it were my dream, it would give me hope. Or I would just to try to frame it in the language of if it were my dream. You know what I mean, Elaine? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that it still keeps Nancy the sole authority. But yeah, it's beautiful. And so many of us have these types of visitations and things, and they are so emotionally charged. The disintegration kind of tells me that if it's my dream that that the dream couldn't really hold the amount of emotion that I was carrying. And so it just collapsed under that. And I
Wow.
actually think that's even, if it's my dream, even more of a reason to go back in and do it again. So because I believe you'll be able to hold the image this time.
I love that. Thank you.
That's
That's a
amazing.
perfect way to end. Jessica,
Um,
we can go on for a
oh,
long time.
I have one other
This
dream
was so fun.
I know,
but we
so
don't
fun.
have time. Oh, I don't know, we probably don't have time, but the dream we had about our dog, a black lab, who I dreamt that she was there. He was a she, but she had on a blonde long wig, and she was talking in this very high voice, and she was telling us all the things that the gardener was doing wrong, and it was just
Oh, that's so cute.
as
I
I
love
said to
that.
tell you that. It was the best,
Oh,
happiest dream.
oh. Well, I feel so honored to be with you ladies. It was so fun. Thank you so much.
It's
Thank you.
so beautiful.
Jessica, if people want to get a hold of you, you have wonderful seminars that you run and you have an incredible newsletter. So, how can people get a hold of you?
Oh, thank you, Nancy. Best way is just to go to my website, which is just my name, jessicalowenstein.com.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thanks for this experience. It's great, Jessica. Bye.
Wow, Elaine, how do you feel about going back and discussing the dream again? We did highlight it in another episode with Jessica. So if you missed it, make sure you look on our wall of podcasts or YouTube.
You know what, Nancy? It was very cathartic. It really was, and I am just it's still in awe of the power of this dream that I had. That turns out that we actually are going to be moving soon, and a lot of this stemmed from the conversation and from the dream that I shared last time. So I hope that all of you will take time to sit back sometime and listen to the dreams that you have. And even if it was a dream that you haven't had recently, there's a lot going on in our heads and our brains are brilliant. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for letting me share about my sweet dad. And it catches me off guard. I'm sure it happens to a lot of you. Just when you least expect it, I thought I could talk, but I didn't know that it was gonna, kind of choke me up. I need my tissue. So thank you everybody. Very revealing. All right. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We're on podcasts, all the platforms, or on YouTube. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you. Sweet dreams.